An unwatchable mess. An overlong sob story. The generic muddle is abetted by a script that struggles with cliche, both in the plot and in the dialogue. No, these aren't reviews for the latest season of Fear the Walking Dead. These are reviews of the Apple TV show The Crowded Room, which currently has a critic score of 33% on Rotten Tomatoes, but has a 92% audience score. Now, as someone who spends much of his time on YouTube complaining, critiquing, moaning about things, making fun of things, you're probably expecting me to just poke fun at this show and take the piss out of it and, yeah, rip it to pieces. But I actually think that this show is kind of okay. Like, it's fine. It's not, a 2.2 out of 5 show. Yeah, someone gave this show a 2.2, which just feels like a random number. Like, what's the difference between a 2 and a 2.2 score? But anyway, it's not a 2.2 out of 5, but it's also not like a 10 out of 10. Like, it's somewhere in the middle. I would give this score like a 6 or 7 out of 10. It's fine. It's okay. It's not essential watching, but, I enjoyed it despite the kind of really messed up content and, the dark undertones and the serious nature of, the abuse and all that stuff. It's not an easy watch, but I did enjoy it. And, I think it's okay. I think this show is getting a bad rep, and I don't think it's that bad. So I'm going to try and defend this show, but I'm also going to talk about some of its problems as well. So major spoilers from this point onwards. The Crowded Room stars Tom Holland as Danny, who is the main protagonist, and in the opening episode, Danny is arrested after trying to shoot a man, who we later learn is his stepfather. Now, one of the first things that I noticed about this show is just how creepy Tom Holland looks in it, because he's got like this kind of mid-length, long, disheveled hair. His dress sense is just not good, kind of has like a creepy vibe and creepy aura to him. And I swear they also like make his skin look a bit worse, like put makeup on him to make him look a bit more, spotty, a bit more greasy. And he just gives off like this really creepy, disturbing aura. Like he's not the kind of guy you would want to approach. And, I think that's quite an achievement in itself, because Tom Holland is like Marvel's poster boy. He's your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. I didn't think that this dude could pull off being like a creepy guy, but he does. And also, I feel bad for judging his character as being creepy, because as the story progresses, we learn that he's suffered a lot of abuse and he's actually like a decent guy. So I feel bad for thinking that when I saw him, for seeing this guy thinking, oh, this guy's a bit weird. This guy's a bit of a creeper. But I'm sure, other people have judged him throughout his life as being like that way. And maybe that's the point. So, yeah, I feel like, the wardrobe team and, the people who came up with this concept and, makeup team, they deserve some credit because, Tom Holland really pulls this off. Like I already said, I didn't feel like Tom Holland, when you look at Tom Holland, he seems like a normal dude, good looking guy. And I never really saw him playing like a creepy dude, but he pulls it off. Speaking of Tom Holland, he is fantastic in this show. So I know I already said spoilers, but this is major story spoilers now. So this is your last warning. Okay? Right. So Tom Holland's character has multiple personalities. He has DID. So, Tom, there are scenes where Tom is like going back and forth between different personalities. He's changing up his accents. He's changing up the way he presents himself. And it shows his range as an actor. It shows that Tom can act. I mean, it kind of reminds me of James McAvoy's performance in Split, and he's very good in that. And Tom echoes that performance in this show. And I like the Tom Holland Spider-Man films, but it never really felt like Tom had to do an awful lot in them. Admittedly, he gets the most to do in the most recent Spider-Man film, where he goes through, a lot of loss and whatnot, and we see more of his emotional range. But he was always just, doing what was expected of him, I guess, in those films. And there was nothing, to those movies which made me think that Tom Holland is a phenomenal actor. He was just doing the whole superhero thing that, countless people have done. But watching this made me realize that the boy can act. Like, he can act. And unfortunately, Tom's agent or whoever is picking these projects doesn't seem to have a good track record because, Uncharted was a flop. He was in that other weird movie where, like, you hear people's thoughts. And I think I watched, like, 10 minutes of that film, and I was like, I can't deal with this concept of just people's thoughts being out loud constantly. It was just irritating. And there's another movie I watched on Apple TV called Cherry, which stars Tom Holland, which has a stupid ending. Like, the ending has a really heartfelt ending for what is like a story about drug addicts and people ruining their lives, which just shouldn't work. It ruins the film. It doesn't work. But Tom is great in that. he's great in that film. And in that film, he also plays like another mentally disturbed man. So he just feels like he's made for this role of playing mentally disturbed young men, basically. And yeah, Cherry is worth a watch, even though the film isn't great, just because Tom's performance in that film is fantastic. And Tom's performance in this show is fantastic also. So let's talk about the massive elephant in the room. That is making a show about a character who has DID. Because I feel like the problem is whenever you make a show about, or a movie or whatever, a story about someone who has dissociative identity disorder, it will always be likened to or compared to the two stories that have basically perfected, you know, a story focusing on this concept. And those two are Fight Club and Mr. Robot. I guess maybe Shutter Island is up there as well. Does he have DID in Shutter Island? Perhaps. I really like Shutter Island. But basically what I'm trying to say is that we've seen this before. And we've seen it done much better. And like Mr. Robot, I've said this before, it's my favorite show of all time. Fight Club, you know, is a cult classic. It's held up as one of the best films of all time. So whenever you make a show about a character who has this kind of mental illness, people will just say, not as good as Fight Club, not as good as Mr. Robot. And I've done that in some cases before. Like I watched Moon Knight, and for the record, I just don't think Moon Knight is very good. But I watched it when it came out because I was still watching Disney Marvel shows back then. I've just given up now. I don't care about Disney Marvel shows now. I don't care. But I was still watching them at that point. And I remember watching Moon Knight and thinking to myself, this is just a bad Mr. Robot. This is just a poor man's Mr. Robot. Maybe I would have liked him more if I hadn't seen Mr. Robot. I don't know, but I still feel that's like it's just a bad, it's not a great show anyway. I still don't really like it. But my point is, my brain automatically goes to Mr. Robot. When I see a show about someone or a movie, whatever, about DID, I just go back to Mr. Robot because for me that show is nearly perfect. It's like near perfection, and I automatically just compare it to that, perhaps unfairly. So maybe that's a reason why critics are so harsh on this show, because we already have fantastic examples that did this concept, you know, and did it a lot better. And, you know, perhaps they feel like it's ripping it off despite the fact that this is based on a book that was written before Mr. Robot and before Fight Club. I don't know, who knows. Another critique that I've seen hurled this show's way is that the DID twist is too obvious and they waste too much time getting to that point. And yes, it is obvious. Like, you can work out fairly early on that Tom's character has multiple personalities, but I don't think the twist being obvious is necessarily a bad thing, because the fact that the twist makes sense means that it doesn't just come out of nowhere. It's not just them, you know, last minute pulling a twist out of their arse going, he was imagining people all along, because some movies do that. And then you're just like, well, that's a cop-out. That doesn't make any fucking sense. Like, sometimes it does seem a bit cheap when they kind of just pull it out of their arse, you know, at the last minute and go, he had multiple personalities. He was crazy the whole time, you know. Whereas I don't mind. I don't mind that it's obvious, because it means it makes sense. It means the twist is logical. I don't mind that. And also, I think the other approach works as well, where you don't see it coming. In some cases, like Mr. Robot, I was shocked at the end of season 1, where it was revealed that Elliot was just imagining Mr. Robot. Right? That worked as well. But on retrospect, you can go back and watch that again, and it is kind of obvious once you know. But yeah, I think both approaches have their pros and cons. I don't think it's necessarily bad that a twist is obvious sometimes, because that means the twist makes sense. That's fine. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. Does the show spend too much time getting to that twist? Perhaps. I would admit, like, the opening 3 episodes is a bit of a slog. It wasn't really until like the end of the 3rd episode or the 4th episode that I was really into it. And probably were it not for the fact that Tom Holland's in this show and he's so good in this show, I might not have watched the entire thing. So yeah, maybe it does spend a bit too long getting there, but I don't think it being obvious is necessarily a bad thing, in my opinion. The Crowded Room splits its runtime between having scenes set in the past where we learn about Danny and learn about why he became the way he did, and we also have a lot of scenes in the present. There's a lot of interactions between Amanda Seyfried's psychologist character and Danny. Amanda Seyfried is trying to prove that DID exists. Like, I don't think many people believe it's a real condition at this point, and she's trying to prove it as like part of her thesis, I guess. And she takes Danny on as kind of a project, and she doesn't just like go into the room and say, "You're crazy!" Like, she tries to, slowly build up rapport and basically try and build a relationship so that she can get to the point where she can confront him without him panicking and having a mental breakdown and, his brain exploding. So yeah, I like these two. I like the relationship that these two have, and I especially like that come the end of the show, Danny thanks her for all the work she did and thanks her for basically saving him. So Danny is awaiting trial for attempting to shoot his stepfather, And the plot to this show is pretty simple, really. Yes, there's the DID aspect, but the overall narrative of this show, it's just a character study. We learn about Danny, we learn about what caused him to be the way he is, and then we just watch as we get closer and closer to the trial, and his legal team and Amanda Seyfried's character attempt to basically prove that he's insane. So it's a fairly simple story. You know, it's not like Mr. Robot, where Elliot is trying to change the world and he's trying to take down, you know, these evil organizations and, you know, give everyone more money and make a fairer society, blah, blah, blah. It's not that kind of show. It's just a character study about Tom Holland's character. And when I was looking on Rotten Tomatoes, I came across a review by TV critic Roger Moore, who complains that this show has no stakes. And I guess that's just because it's a show about a mentally ill dude going to trial. Like, there's no, like I said, there's no, you know, we got to save the world going on here. And I'm going to be honest, I don't actually mind that. Like, sometimes I'm fine watching a show that has low stakes. Like, I want this character not to go to jail. By the end of the show, I was so invested with Tom Holland's character that I wanted him, you know, to be found insane and not be sent to prison. Those stakes were enough for me at that point. I understand that for some people that might be a bit boring, but not every show has to be about someone trying to save the world, you know? So I find that a rather odd critique. Yes, there are shows that have like absolutely no stakes and you're like, yeah, this is pointless. What is the point? Like, I'm not saying you can't critique something for having low stakes, but the point I'm trying to make is that the stakes there, you know, for me personally, because this is a character study, you know, that the idea of not wanting him to go to prison and wanting him to, you know, be able to be recuperated and like basically be cured and get treatment and carry on with his life, those stakes were high enough for me. Because if he goes to prison and he doesn't get, you know, the treatment he would get by being declared insane, his life's over. He's going to spend his life in jail. He's not going to get the help he needs. So, you know, the stakes were there in the respect that I wanted his character to basically, you know, prosper and to be treated and to be found insane. So that was enough for me. That was enough for me. But I guess if you never connect with his character, then maybe you would say that there are no stakes. But yeah, I don't agree with this, Roger Moore. I don't agree with you, Mr. 1.5 out of 4. Yeah, very odd that like some TV critics review things out of 4. I always just assume that like out of 10 or out of 5 was like the standard review scale for everything. So there seems like a lot of TV critics give things a score out of 4, which is yeah, news to me. The content of The Crowded Room, to put it bluntly, is like really fucking depressing. Really, really depressing watch. Like, this is not a light-hearted romp, to say the least, okay? Like, this is just the stuff that happens to Danny is fucked up. And, you know, his life is one that's full of abuse, full of pain. And, yeah, at one point in the show, I was just thinking, how unlucky can this boy be? Like, there's one scene that stands out to me where Danny is like a young boy and he's at school. And the teacher holds him back behind class. And, like, the teacher is sitting opposite him in a chair. And the teacher, like, begins to lean over and try and touch his leg. Really fucking creepy. And then his dad walks in, or his stepdad, sorry, walks in. And he's like, what's going on here? And the teacher, like, jumps back because he knows he's been caught, right? So the stepdad takes Danny out, drives him home, or you think he's driving him home, puts him in his car. And he's like, you know, you can tell me anything that happened in there. Tell me what happened. What was he trying to do? Now, at this point in the show, we've already seen other scenes set in the past, but set further ahead than this scene, which shows Danny's stepdad to be an abusive, alcoholic piece of shit who treats Danny like shit, treats his wife like shit. So, I don't like this guy. But when I saw this scene, I was thinking to myself, okay, maybe he wasn't always a fucking dickhead. Like, maybe there was a point in time where he did actually try and look out for Danny. Like, maybe he was okay at one point in time, and then something happened, he lost someone, you know, someone close to him died, a tragic event happened that caused him to become an alcoholic. Maybe he was a normal person at some point. I don't know. So, even though I'd just seen this, like, disgusting scene of this teacher basically trying to molest him, his stepdad comes in, and at this point I'm thinking, okay, he's doing, you know, what a parent figure should. He's trying to protect, you know, his stepson. And at that point I was thinking, okay, maybe he was okay at one point. But no, he then drives Danny to a barn and rapes him. So he goes from getting nearly molested by his teacher to getting raped by his stepdad on the same day. What the fuck? What the fuck? Jesus. But anyway, like, the constant theme of this show is people who should be protecting Danny just constantly letting him down. I mean, his mum is just as bad. Well, perhaps she's not as bad as a rapist, but his mum, sorry, I also don't like his mother because she picks the stepdad over him. You know, she denies the abuse and basically pretends it never happens. She doesn't attend the court date, the court hearing, sorry. For much of the court hearing, she doesn't attend. They keep trying to convince her to go there and basically testify that her husband, her ex-husband, I don't think they're still together. Oh, no, they were still together at this point, yeah, to testify that her husband is abusive and, raped her son. And she's like, nope, not doing it. Then she finally does do it. She finally walks into the court scene, and this scene fucking irritated me. Like, this scene enraged me, because she walks in, and at this point, like, I don't think the court case is going very well from what we've seen of it. And she walks in, and you see Danny, like, his face light up. He's like, my mum is here. Finally, mate, she might have not protected me all those years ago, but finally she's here, and she's going to come out and say, what happened to me. And, I get a feeling that perhaps she didn't want to admit it in the past because she just couldn't bring herself to admit that happened under her roof and that she'd brought a guy who's a, paedophile into her house. But here she is at the trial. And like I said, you see some hope in Danny's face. And you're finally thinking to yourself, okay, she's going to do the right thing. She's going to finally come out and say, yes, he was abused. And, that's why he's crazy. That's why he tried to shoot this man. But she stands up, she goes up and says, what's it called? It's not an altar, is it, during a trial? I don't know what it's called, the thing you go up to. But whatever, she takes the stand, that'll do, the stand. And she just denies it, flat out. She's like, no, he was never raped. No, he just makes up these stories. And you just see Danny be absolutely crushed. I can't imagine doing that to your kid. Like, I wanted to fucking punch her in the face. Like, I know you shouldn't hit women, but I was so pissed off during that scene. I was like, what a fucking bitch. What an absolute bitch. And then shortly after, Danny goes back to his cell and slits his wrists. And at that point, you can fucking blame him. Like, he's gone through all that abuse. Everyone lets him down time and time again. And man, that ending where he like basically tries to kill himself, that was so depressing. I was getting really upset, man. I was like, this is fucked. I was like, this poor guy. This poor guy. So for me, I'll go back to what I said earlier. The stakes in this show were fine, because the episode after that is like the resolution of the court case. After what I had just seen, I want him to win the court case, all right? So to say that there's no stakes in the show is kind of a bizarre critique. I know I mentioned it earlier, but yeah, the stakes were enough for me. And poor old Danny, he's let down time and time again. And, at one point watching this, because there's also like a drug dealer, drug dealer dude who he's trying to buy the gun from, who also wants like sexual favors from him. And at this point, I was thinking to myself, is this a bit too much? Like, he seems to be getting fucking raped and sexually abused by everyone. Like, this is a bit too much, is it not? But then, I don't know, I looked into it a bit. And, like, abuse victims they can be targeted more than once. They're easy target. They are easy targets. Like, abusers know what people to prey on. And, they're often vulnerable. So it does happen. It can happen, more than once. So perhaps it's not as unrealistic as I initially thought. And I also read a story, this horrific story, in the past week or so, about this young girl in the UK. I think she was like raped by someone, and she's raped by someone. Is this video going to get banned because I'm using the word rape? Because I know a lot of YouTubers just blank out rape, but whatever. Anyway, this girl was raped by someone. I think she was like 15, 16. Then a couple of months later, her brother murdered her and raped her. Then when her body was found by a passerby, the passerby molested her fucking body. What the fuck? Like, what? That's just the kind of story that you read and you just think, just nuke the fucking planet. What the hell is wrong with people? So I read that story. Weirdly enough, that story was being published around the same time as watching this show. And I began to think to myself, okay, maybe this isn't that unrealistic. Like, maybe this does happen, the poor woman. But yes, so, abuse does happen to people multiple times. And, I also think that Danny's mum is kind of a victim because she's terrified of her husband. Before she stands at the trial, he does say to her, you know what's going to happen if you testify against me. I guess, basically saying he's going to beat her up or kill her or whatever, right? So she's terrified of him, although I would still say that you should really protect your son and still, come out in support of your son at the trial. But whatever, she's also broken. Like, she is also, not a mentally stable person, as is Dani. And I did like that come the end of the show, she visits him when he's getting like treatment in his clinic place. And she tries to make amends and is like, oh, I'll keep coming back and, I'll try and build a relationship with you. And he's just not really interested. And I like that because that felt realistic to me. Like, if Dani had just been like, yes, Mum, I love you, I forgive you, would have been highly unrealistic to forgive someone who had just like let this abuse carry on for years. And who also, tried to make you look insane. Well, he was insane. But you know what I mean? Also tried to make him look like a liar at his court case and say that he's made up all these abuse claims. Like, I don't know how, if that was me, I would not been able to forgive them. So I think it's very realistic that Dani is like, no, I don't really want anything to do with you, Mum. Sorry, I don't really care. And instead, we see a scene of him thanking Amanda Seyfrield's character for being there the entire time rather than his mother. So yes, the show is a depressing watch, but I did like the optimistic ending. I liked it when they finally made like the breakthrough in the court case. There are some humorous moments throughout though as well. Like there's a moment where Dani is one of his alters is in charge, and he's got like some kind of drug addict, like some teenager who just wants to smoke pot all the time and kind of a bit of a waster is like one of his personalities. And this dude is like harassing people in the prison gym, trying to score like dope off people. And they basically just get tired of his shit and start beating the shit out of him. And then like one of the other personalities switches, and he switches to, I believe, like might be a British man who one of his alters is. He switches to him, and he just starts like kicking the crap out of everyone. And his accent changes as well, and everyone in the gym is just like, what the hell happened? So there are some like funny moments like that. But this isn't, like I said, this isn't a comedy by any stretch of the imagination. I do like the set design of the scenes that take place within Dani's head, where we see like his different personalities talking and clashing, because they all take place within like this maze-like barn, which is apt because the barn was where he suffered the first abuse. And there's like a literal limelight, like a literal like stage light that the alters, the personalities step into. And if they are standing in this limelight, in this light, then they are the one who is in charge, and they're the one who's present. And I guess you could argue it's a bit on the nose, like literally stepping into the light, but stepping into the limelight. But I liked it. I don't know, I thought it was kind of clever in a way. I thought it was kind of cute. Like I've already said, Tom Holland is fantastic, and I completely understand why he said that he needed a break after this show. Mentally he needed a break, and just to be able to like switch in and out of different accents on the fly and different personalities and present yourself differently. Yeah, it's a definite, a big talent that he has. And he's a good actor. He's really good in this. But now I want to talk about some negatives. Some of the character decision making, or rather lack of decisions on this show, is a bit baffling, to be honest. Like the scene in the court, they're trying to prove that Dani's crazy, that he has DID. And multiple times for the case, Dani like switches personalities. I think at one point the English personality takes over, like the English gentleman takes over. And Dani is very clearly at that point speaking and answering questions in an English accent, right? And not once did the lawyer think to say, my client is now speaking in a different accent because another personality has taken over. Like, if you're trying to prove that your client has multiple personalities and is crazy, surely just point out the fact that at that moment in time, they are being taken over by another personality because they sound British when they are supposed to be American. I don't know, it's bizarre. Like, there's another scene where it happens where Dani is meeting the prosecuting team, and then he's speaking the British accent as well. And again, no one bats an eyelid. It's like, okay, this American dude is just speaking British. Okay. I don't know, maybe they just think he's making it up. Maybe they just think he's playing around, making it up. Or maybe they do think he is crazy, but, he doesn't have DID. I don't know, but I just felt it was odd. It's like he's clearly speaking in an English accent, a very posh English accent. He does not sound like Tom Holland's American accent. Why is no one picking up on this? Why is no one saying that this is, that you could use this as proof, arguably, to prove that he has multiple personalities, or at least try and make a point about it? But nope, everyone just ignores that, which is kind of weird. I do agree that some of the dialogue is cliche. Like, I wouldn't say it's a huge problem. I mean, I'm a guy who reviewed Fear the Walking Dead, so, maybe watching that before this show has made this show seem much better, because the Fear dialogue is always atrocious. But yeah, there are some like moments where the alters are, talking to one another, and you get very cliche dialogue, and it's like, we'll always be a part of you, Danny boy. Yeah, you kind of get a bit cliche, but it's not a huge issue. Like, I wasn't cringing every time characters talked from this show, so it's there, but I can overlook it. And whilst Tom Holland is fantastic, there isn't really much else to say about the rest of the characters. Like, I mean, the fact that I can't even remember Amanda Seyfrield's character's name basically shows, gives you how I feel about her, because they're not that memorable. Like, most of them are just blank slates. Like, they do try and add some scenes of Amanda Seyfrield's character, being at home, and we see a bit of her home life. I think she lives with her mum, but it doesn't really add much to it. Like, this is clearly a show about Tom Holland's Danny, and all the rest of the other characters are just there to kind of like prop him up. And, like Mr. Robot, of course, was Elliot's story, but that show also had like incredible side characters like, Tyrell and Irving, whereas this doesn't really have anyone. Like, Amanda Seyfried isn't bad. Like, she's not bad in this show, but she's just, I don't know, doing what is expected of her, I guess. Just, like I said, she's not a bad performance, but I didn't watch this and think, whoa, Amanda was amazing. But then again, the script wasn't written in the way that she had to do anything extraordinary. She just, did the whole psychologist thing. And like I've already said earlier, I think the early portions of the show do drag a bit. Like, there are moments when you're watching it and it's just, like flashback scenes of Tom Holland's character, like having a party and, just hanging out with friends. And at that point, you're kind of thinking, what is the point of this? Like, why am I watching this? But as you find out later on in the show, a lot of these people are just constructs. They don't exist. So it does have a purpose, but that's perhaps not obvious when you're first watching it, and it doesn't make it any less tedious. But overall, I feel this show is fine. Like I said, 6 or 7 out of 10 is fine. It's okay. It got to the point where come the end of the show, I was actually looking forward to watching it once a week because I was so invested in Tom Holland's character. And I feel it's fine. I don't feel that this is an unwatchable mess, as some critics have said. Like, they need to watch Fear the Walking Dead if they think this is an unwatchable mess. This show is fine. 6 or 7 out of 10. It's fine. It's not a masterpiece, but I liked it. I thought it was okay. So let me know if you have watched The Crowded Room in the comments below. And if you have, what do you think of it? Do you agree with me? Do you agree with the Rotten Tomatoes viewer score, which seem to think more of it than I do? Or do you agree that it is an unwatchable mess? Whatever your thoughts are, let me know in the comments below, and I shall see you all very soon. Take care. Goodbye.